actually think that bringing panels together, bringing forums for people to meet other people who aren't like them, is an important part, because inclusion starts with you.
Microsoft Build is our ultimate annual developer event, where the most innovative minds in tech meet to get inspired, create tomorrow, and code the future.
The conference will take place from May 7th through the 9th at the Washington State Convention Center in Seattle, Washington.
Programming will focus on artificial intelligence, machine learning, mixed reality, cloud, data, and other emerging concepts.
For more information about the event or to register, head to Microsoft.com/build.
You are listening to the Women in Business and Technology podcast from Microsoft. In each episode, you will hear from women in amazing technology and business roles,
as well as male allies who are helping make the industries more inclusive.
I'm bringing you tips on how to build a successful career in a supportive community.
Welcome to Women in Business and Technology.
Welcome to episode 20 of Women in Business and Technology. I'm Colleen O'Brien.
And I'm Sonia Dara.
And we are recording on site at the Women in Tech Regatta. This is the second annual WIT Regatta, and it's a week-long gathering to connect women in tech to mentors, peers, and resources. So you can imagine that we are having a great time here.
So we're here recording at The Collective, which is a brand new urban clubhouse that just opened up in the heart of South Lake Union, which is actually the tech neighborhood here in Seattle. So right down the street is Facebook, Amazon, we have a Microsoft office nearby, Snapchat, just a very tech-centric area, so perfect fit for the event tonight. So The Collective is a great clubhouse where you can come eat, drink, chill, you can network with people, or there is even a bouldering wall if you wanted to get in some fitness.
And Sonia and I are incredibly honored to be joined here by connection engineer, startup junkie, and the creator of the WIT Regatta, Melody Beringer. Melody, welcome.
Thank you. This is so fun.
I know that you are the creator of this event. Why did you decide to make it happen?
Well, I was on the board of Women in Tech, a nonprofit in Seattle, about 5 years ago. And for the last 20 years, I've been supporting women entrepreneurs. But I've been hanging out on the Women in Tech board, just kind of like seeing the ecosystem, what's going on in Seattle with women in tech. And I was just fascinated. And in the last couple of years, we as a board were kind of studying how many nonprofits were popping up in the Seattle area alone, and we started adding them up and we found that there was 66. And I said, oh my goodness, we need to have a resource reception and get all of these people together. Some of them are national organizations and some of them are local, and let's just have a big party and show everybody, you know, what we have to offer as a city. So last year we did the first one, and we had 700 people come and so much community support, and it was just one evening. So I've been working on this for a year, and I decided to blow it out and make it a whole week. We have 37 events going on this week, and it's just to me it's just this amazing experience. Like you said, I'm a connection engineer, so I love like trying to figure out how to bring groups of people together and have them connect. And I really saw a need for women in tech. Most techies are introverts, and so they need somebody like me to say, hey, I'm going to bring you together and figure out how to get you seen and heard.
Can you tell me about the theme or the slogan for this week?
So the hashtag is relationships are the true currency. And I just really want to emphasize that everybody that comes to the Women in Tech Regatta, the WIT Regatta as we call it, I want them to be seen and heard. So this is not a keynote event. This is a boutique event. And so everything we do is very intimate. Even though we have over 1,000 people coming, all of our workshops are like 50 to 100 people, and we break everybody up in groups of 4 and 5, and we ask them some vulnerable questions for them to get to know each other so they can really create those true relationships. It's my goal that if they walk out of here with one friend after the week, I've succeeded. And it could be a friend, or it could be a colleague, you know, a new business relationship.
Melody, I am so excited that you had this big idea, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of the week.
We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you for putting so much time and energy and passion into this event.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, listeners, we're going to go check out the networking event right now, but let's move on to the interview.
Community Connect. Get involved and stay connected.
At the opening reception resource fair, I spoke with Fatia Ibrahim, a system stress engineer at Boeing and the secretary of the professionals chapter of the National Society of Black Engineers here in Seattle. Fatia brought me up to speed on the history and the mission of the organization.
The National Society of Black Engineers was an organization that was started by some students, undergrad students in Purdue in the 1960s. And basically it was put together to help the retention of black engineers because 80% of black students who went into engineering majors dropped out before they graduated. And so there was a need for some sort of support system to help students graduate from schools. And so the National Society of Black Engineers started as a collegiate organization. And over the years, it grew so big that it became not only a collegiate organization, it extends to pre-college students and also people who've left college and are now in the professional field. The mission statement of the National Society of Black Engineers is to increase the number of culturally responsible black engineers who excel academically, succeed professionally, and positively impact the community.
The professional chapter of the National Society of Black Engineers, or NSBE, recently formed in Seattle in response to the growing community of engineering students graduating from local colleges. Fatia explained that NSBE decided to partner with the Women in Tech Regatta to raise awareness amongst the local community of tech professionals and more tenured organizations.
So we said, hey, the Women in Tech Regatta is a huge event, hundreds of people. It's a great way to get our name out there. It's a great way to connect with other groups and see how we could maybe work with them, align our different programs maybe, and just leverage the different talents out there.
While the professional chapter of NSBE is new in town, Fatia has a clear vision of what success looks like for the organization.
Success would be the word engineer being a common word in the community of color. There's not a lot of people of color who are actually pursuing engineering degrees for one reason or another. But I feel like success would be like any household you go to, you talk engineer, everyone knows what it is. It's not just, oh, engineers, what? Build buildings? What do you do? So once that everyone understands like what an engineer does and everyone feels like it's something that they can do, I think that would be a huge success for the organization. It's basically like making people see that this is something that is an option for them.
Fatia outlined a few ways that allies can support NSBE.
One way is to help when we do outreach events, for example, like at UW or high schools or middle schools, volunteering to talk about engineering with those students, because we mainly focus on underrepresented minorities and students that don't really get that type of outreach, and letting them know that, hey, this is what it actually is, and making them aware. Another way is to spread the word. Like if you know someone that's struggling, maybe they feel lonely and they're like, I don't know anyone who looks like me, and you've heard of this organization, then link them up. Be like, hey, I know there's a National Society of Black Engineers. I heard they're a cool organization. They're a big family. I think it'd be something you'd like. So spreading the word, volunteering, and if you can, even supporting it financially if you can.
Fatia explained that if you're hiring for a job, NSBE is the first community you should consult to identify great candidates.
Our chapter on campus at the University of Washington has actually gotten so big that we've gotten so many companies reach out to us and say, hey, we're recruiting, can we come in and talk to your students? And it's been a great resource. We've gotten like 30 people got internships and jobs, and it was like a record high that we've had in the history of what we know, at least at UW. We're working on trying to make the professionals chapter also a good resource for recruiters to come out and maybe look for professionals to hire in even executive positions, because that's our goal as a professionals chapter too, is try to get like, okay, we graduated from college, now let's try and get our professionals up to those higher positions in these companies. Come if you need anyone, if you need to recruit, it's a great group of people.
To find a local chapter of the National Society of Black Engineers and to learn more about future events and volunteering opportunities, visit nsbe.org.
I'm thrilled to welcome Women in Tech Regatta Advisory Board member Cynthia T. to our show today. Cynthia, thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited for you to make the time to connect with us on this
Very, very busy week. So Cynthia, what does your role as an advisory board member for WIT Regatta actually entail?
So I started working with Melody Beringer, who's the founder of the WIT Regatta, last year, actually in April, when she put this event together for one evening. And my role has primarily been to really help her bring a diverse set of women and men together for her panels around leadership and mentorship, around tech topics, and around inclusion. And also just volunteer in general to help the event be successful.
What attracted you to the organization in the first place? Like, how did you actually get to meet her last year?
Last year, there was an organization in Seattle actually called Women in Tech that for a couple of years, basically founded by Britta Jacob and Martina Welkoff, did these quarterly panels that brought women together and allowed them to build relationships. So from that particular organization, they thought of this one-night event of panels, and they brought Melody in to basically orchestrate it. And she basically took just basically a very simple concept that both Britta and Martina had and just turned it into a wonderful regatta event that evening. And so I was part of the Women in Tech organization at the time and met Melody and got very excited because I really believe that having a network is super important. As a woman in tech and as somebody underrepresented, and I think I very much believe in her motto that relationship is the true currency. Mm-hmm. Like that is super important, and it's what helps us thrive, be successful, and be supported in this industry. And so I really wanted to help make that event a success.
So if it's not obvious to our listeners already, the concept of inclusion is a major theme in your life.
Yeah.
It became a tent pole of your career, as well as when you became the executive director of Ada Developers Academy in 2015. So for our listeners, Ada Developers Academy is a training program here in Seattle, Washington, for women and gender diverse people who want to become software developers. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about Ada Developers Academy and what that work meant for you?
So I was the executive director for Ada for 2.5 years. I left that position 6 months ago. Nicole Buchanan is now the executive director. Ada is a tuition-free, fully full-time immersive program to take those without any formal computer science or programming training and turn them into software developers, entry-level software developers by the end of that year. It is a 6-month classroom experience combined with a 5-month internship program. The graduates basically come out with an average salary of $95,000 a year. I think that the key thing about it is it provides access to a career that has traditionally been completely inaccessible to people. College is expensive. People can't afford it. There are a lot of smart, capable people who just have no role models, have never been encouraged to go down this path, did not have the training opportunities, and when they do have the training opportunities, feel like they're already behind because they don't have the machines, they don't have the financial means to get exposed to it early on. So Ada tries to address that and does address it. We have a pretty high job placement rate for all our graduates, and there's a whole lot of companies in Seattle. I'm very thankful that the industry in Seattle is so supportive of this program, and more sponsors, including big corporations like Amazon and Microsoft and Google, support the program.
So Cynthia, you have a master's, as we mentioned, in computer science from MIT. But at Ada, you were leading an organization where applicants had almost no experience with software developments, as you mentioned. So they are graduating into industry roles. What does it take to be successful in the technology industry today? And what would you say to other graduates who are entering without that experience?
I would say to be successful today, you definitely need the training to be able to program. I feel like programming is just part of a toolbox of solutions you need to solve problems today. It can definitely be vocationally trained, as I would say, meaning you don't necessarily need a formal degree in computer science. But I think to be successful today, you need a more well-rounded understanding of the full context of the problem you're trying to solve. If you build software that you expect everybody around the world to use, you better understand the backgrounds of people around the world and how they're about to use your technology, the issues that are very specific with different countries, with people from different religions, people of different race, people of different financial backgrounds. If you want software to be integrated in their lives, you need to be able to understand that. One person cannot understand all those things, and therefore you need a team that is diverse enough to contribute to that. And so I think if you bring together people from different backgrounds to really understand all the issues earlier on, I'm not saying you'd be perfect and avoid it, but you probably would have been able to preemptively see quite a bit of it.
So Cynthia, you managed Port 2 theme at the regatta this week, which was actually entirely focused on inclusive culture.
Yeah.
What was the motivation for making inclusion such a major focus for this week-long event?
You know, at the time that I started participating and volunteering for WIT, I was the executive director at Ada Developers Academy. And I've always been a champion of diversity and inclusion, even when I was working at Microsoft. But I actually don't think I knew what that meant until I started leading Ada and realized I had a lot to learn, actually, about how to create a more inclusive space at the Academy to support not only women, but gender diverse people, people of color, and people with disability, and people that just have so many identities that are underrepresented today in our industry. And so as part of my journey through Ada and wanting to really create a supportive community within the Academy, I also felt like I wanted to support and create a community for them in the industry. And hence my passion for participating at a more citywide level to promote that. I also believe inclusion is a journey for everybody. And I think it's not something you just do with training. I actually think that bringing panels together, bringing forums for people to meet other people who aren't like them is an important part, because inclusion starts with you as an individual. And I wanted to create the opportunity for people as individuals to really define it for themselves by meeting other people who are on the same journey. So that was my motivation for the single event that was part of that April 1st regatta, and Melody's motivation also for just taking every single event she took that night and making it its own track.
So you were talking about this concept of inclusion and this journey. So when would you say you started your journey for inclusion?
I started realizing that it was a problem for me in college when I majored in computer science, because I always felt like the only one and I always felt it was behind. I did not actually recognize that I could do something about it until I started working at Microsoft. And it's one of those things that the problem, you look at it and then you're aware, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like peeling an onion, finding several layers. And then it took me a couple of years at Microsoft to realize truly how deep those layers ran. And at Ada, it became really, really huge in terms of being so multidimensional and complicated. Because so much of what is good inclusion is really understanding all the different dimensions, that people are different, and really building an environment that makes people feel heard and makes people feel like they belong, is recognizing all these differences and creating a safe space to accommodate them. Religion, race, gender identity, expression, orientation, body size, ability, like everything. It's complicated. You know, in tech, I think we aspire to be experts at everything. Like, I don't know that there's such a thing as being an expert in this area. I think you just start the journey, you get better, you don't ever expect thanks for it, because it's actually an obligation for the leaders in this space to strive towards a more inclusive community. And I don't actually think anybody does a perfect job of it today. I don't think there's such a thing, you know, maybe there is such a thing as perfect, but we're all still trying to get there. And I think every effort and every good positive outcome counts at an individual level as well as a team level.
In addition to coordinating so many conversations throughout the week, you've also been contributing to the program as well. So earlier today, you were sitting on a panel discussion titled, quote, The Right Crew, Secrets to a Successful Ally-Mentee Partnership. The panel was comprised of mentee, mentor partners, and pairs, which made for some really dynamic conversation, which we loved. And you were joined by your mentee, Tahoot. And a lot of the panel discussion was focused on the work it takes to actually build a great mentoring relationship, that there's effort to build on a foundation of honesty. So how do you go about establishing radical candor in your mentoring relationships?
I think there are a couple of parts to it. I think that part of a mentoring relationship is to build trust with whoever you're menteeing or you're mentoring, right? A mentee needs to want you to be their mentor. And I really believe in making sure that is established. This person actually wants me to be there to give them guidance. I don't believe in just giving guidance for the sake of giving guidance to somebody. And really getting to know that person and establishing trust with that person is super important. That allows them to feel safe to be candid with me. And that means asking me questions that they feel safe asking me, whatever question is on their mind, but also feeling safe being vulnerable with me. And in exchange for me to feel that I can be also vulnerable with them. Because my goal as a mentor is not to be perfect. My goal is to be able to support somebody and give them guidance within the context of what they need, but also to learn from them. Like, this is a two-way street for me.
And later this afternoon, because not only did you have enough on your plate, so you were involved in a couple of panels, there is another one that you were a part of called When Women Turn on Other Women, Why This Happens and How to Fix It. So the panel composition was great, featuring both women in tech, psychologists, those who could help work through the behavioral motivations behind stories from basically the trenches. I was surprised that almost every anecdote from that panel referenced a relationship, though, that was both personal and professional. So there was a lot of I lost a friend was uttered definitely more than once. I'm not sure if you had noticed that as well.
Yeah, I did. I think it gets extremely personal because on the one hand, we're all in this together. We all want to fight for equity. We all want to champion women and support them. And I have to honestly say that so many relationships I've had with women have mostly been positive. It's the couple of them that are not positive that then become that much more painful because of all the mission we share. And then you have these situations happen, right? And I think that it's really difficult for us to be very objective. I really want to make sure that people know that they're not alone, that so many of us have experienced this, and I think there's a way we can have these conversations so that we keep each other accountable to healing and making things better. There's a part of me that's like, well, why didn't I step up and treat that situation just like I would any other situation with a man? Have those honest conversations, call people on it, not be afraid to be direct. And I think in part, I did that panel because I wanted to call myself to action. I wanted people to also validate that, yeah, you do need to do something about it, Cynthia.
Unfortunately, there was definitely some standard themes that were referenced during that discussion of that there's only room for one at the top, that women are constantly in competition with one another. So how do you personally set those untrue stories of competition and scarcity aside to do the important work of supporting other women?
I think it's a very deliberate balance. I think that I consciously choose times when I give space to others. I have been in this industry now for over 20 years. I've made it to a fairly senior executive level.
Yeah.
I feel like I still have to fight for it sometimes. It's unbelievable sometimes how I still have to explain that I am actually technical. I have a master's degree.
From MIT, nonetheless.
Yeah. It's amazing to me how I have to sometimes mansplain my way through job qualifications.
Awesome. And then we just left your third panel that you helped coordinate today called In Their Own Words, Stories of Underrepresented Voices in Tech. I absolutely loved this panel.
Yeah.
I thought it was amazing.
It was amazing.
Super intimate. There was 5 panelists. Just some of the most amazing women that I have heard their stories. For our listeners and those who couldn't be there, what would be your top 3 takeaways from that panel?
One is what Zena said about social justice, and that what we face in the tech industry about diversity and inclusion is social justice. Diversity, inclusion, and social justice, the same thing. Because for so many people, it's not different. What you experience in the workplace, the oppression and the bias there, and the oppression you go out in the street, it's not different. And so that was one key takeaway. I think the second was the allyship being about action, being about empathy, being about really doing your own education, and not putting the burden on people who already have to deal with this every hour, every second of their lives. And I think the third one that was just really struck me is each panel's stories about all the ridiculous questions that they have to deal with. The stereotypes, the very rude, invasive questions about their body parts, about terrorism and their religion. And it seems appalling on the surface, but it still happens quite a bit. And, to be an ally is to, catch those and call people on it. Is not okay to do that. And if you do it yourself, to just apologize and move on and not try to justify your intent. This is not about intent. This is about your impact on other people.
Cynthia, in addition to your work with WIT Regatta, you are a consultant with Diverse City LLC, where you facilitate ally skills workshops. These workshops teach everyday ways for people to use their privilege and influence to support people who are targets of systemic oppression. Can you share one of the tactics from the workshops that our audience could perhaps start using immediately?
I feel very strongly about this workshop. I also do it for Ada Developers Academy, and I believe it's an important discussion to start. And I do it because it is a journey and a discussion for me, even. And I think the more people we bring into this discussion, the more people understand that you can talk about these things. You can make mistakes, but if you do make mistakes, apologize, move on, focus on the impact, and make it a learning moment is truly important. I think one of the pieces of action people can take that is super important is to really empathize and act on what it's like to be the only one. And there are so many of us in this industry that feel like the only one of ourselves in a room, in a meeting, in a conference, in a performance review discussion all the time. And I think if there's one thing you can do as an ally is to put yourself in that situation as much as possible. When you ask for the trust and put yourselves in that space with people who are so different from you, and you start to understand what it feels like to be the only one, you will develop the empathy, and you will naturally start to figure out what to do to champion people in that situation.
In addition to your work with Ada, you're inspiring more girls to become interested in STEM as a volunteer with Ignite Worldwide. Yeah. Ignite is an acronym for Inspiring Girls Now in Technology Evolution. And we actually just saw you at the Ignite Gala a couple weeks back. The organization introduces girls from grades 6 to 12 to technology careers via panel discussions, job shadowing, mentoring, field trips. So what does your volunteer work look like with Ignite?
I found Ignite because one day, 4 teachers and 25 girls showed up at my door at Ada. And I had no idea who they were. They said, well, we are here to visit Ada. We arranged it. I quickly looked through my email because I was very worried that I had accepted something and forgot. And I couldn't find anything. And I looked at all these girls, all high school age, all girls of color, with their teachers of color come through my door. And at that point in time, my staff and I basically had the time to take them in. Crystal, who was one of my instructors, did an impromptu workshop using Arduinos, which she does a lot for high school in general, and was able to pull that off. And we talked about Ada, and we had some of our students in the classroom also come and speak to them. And it was such a wonderful experience. And Kathy found me later and she said, I am so sorry. I'm not really, to this day, we don't know how this happened. But I also tell her, this was truly a blessing in disguise. Yeah. I loved it. I enjoyed it. I learned more about your organization. I think this is great. Starting from that point, twice a year, we bringing the girls from Ignite over for the morning. And today, Nicole has carried that forward. I went to Kathy's gala. I do that now. This was my 2nd year, and I love what she does. I love what she enables. And I am in support of really encouraging at every age group, this whole participation in STEM and accessibility of technology, I think Kathy is doing it for this particular age group. I think these girls need to see role models and examples of what it's like to be successful. They need to find themselves in other people. And I think that is really one of the key things that's going to help them build their interest and keep it sustained.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I think about every workshop I do, and I think about every panel I'm on, and I think about every mentoring or coffee relationship that I have. And I feel like out of all those, if I just somehow, with what I say, convince somebody to come on that journey with me, to just be more self-aware about their biases, figure out how to take more action as an ally, that for me is a really good outcome.
So Cynthia, where can our listeners find you on the internet?
I'm on LinkedIn. People can always find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, listeners, we are officially wrapping up this week at the Women in Tech Regatta. We are currently sitting at Bar Harbor, which is a local restaurant, enjoying some rosé to close out this surprisingly sunny day. So Colleen, what were your thoughts as we close things out here?
Well, I have been so impressed with the WIT Regatta programming, from panels on cryptocurrency and bleeding edge tech to resume help and side hustle support. I have learned a ton over the past few days. And I really appreciate that every panel this week kicked off with a reading of the Code of Conduct. Many conferences don't even have a Code of Conduct, so I doubly appreciated that commitment to maintaining a safe space for everyone. How about you, Sonia? What are you reflecting on here over this rosé?
Yeah, no, it would definitely have to be the hashtag What Would Chad Do? The whole premise of that panel was to examine the research-backed ways that men and women behave differently in the workplace, and to promote ways that women can be basically bolder at work. Two really great examples that bubbled up were how we negotiate for salary increases, or even speaking up in meetings.
Yeah, I really appreciated that panel too. Marley Childs was one of the hashtag What Would Chad Do panelists. She's a graduate of Ada Developers Academy, the organization that Cynthia led that you spoke to her about, and a current program manager at Microsoft. And I was so inspired by her message. She suggested that even if you have an incredible new job offer on the table, an offer that you're completely in love with when it comes to salary, time off, etc., that you need to ask for something. That the company needs to know that you're the type of person who asks for more. I'm so energized by that sentiment of asserting your self-worth and your confidence in such a critical moment.
Yeah, and there was one man on the hashtag What Would Chad Do panel, Nick Petty, a VP of software engineering at Capital One. He's an instructor with Girls Who Code and an advocate for women at work. A secondary hashtag that grew organically out of the panel was hashtag Find Your Nick, which I loved. That was definitely a big takeaway for me. If your ideas are getting trampled in work meetings and you're not finding and getting the credit that you deserve, please get out there and hashtag Find Your Nick.
I really can't think of a better way to wrap this episode.
Yeah, but before we officially drop these mics and switch back to our rosé, we wanted to plug two upcoming events for anyone traveling to Seattle for Microsoft Build, our annual developer event. The conference will be here at the Washington State Convention Center, where in addition to finding great keynotes and sessions, you'll discover a relaxing oasis called The Lounge.
That's right. On Monday, May 7th from 5 to 7 p.m., The Lounge will host a women and non-binary community happy hour hosted by Microsoft's Kate Delamaza Baker and Nina Baliga, the co-founder of Diversity, that's stylized as an HTML division or section tag, and then Ursity, diversity.
Nice.
Nina and her co-founder are connecting a community of diverse tech talent with trusted, transparent companies.
Yep, and then on Wednesday, May 9th, the lounge is hosting a Represent Breakfast for attendees who identify as part of an underrepresented or marginalized community. Head on over from 7:45 a.m. to 9 a.m. for mimosas, breakfast burritos, cappuccinos, art, and plenty more.
For more information about the conference, visit Microsoft.com/build. And as always, we really appreciate your support. So subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts, or find us at wibt.com.
Thank you so much, and we're gonna go back to our rosé now, so see you later.
Our food is here, so we'll catch you next time.